Men are raised by society to hide their emotions in public. The problem is, we were never taught what to do with them in private. We idealize men that are cool, calm, and collected under pressure, with the acceptable emotion of violent anger as acceptable to show. Bonus points if it's cool, calm, and collected violence. We know these people as badasses. Then, there are people like me. Ever since I was a teenager, I struggled with intense emotions. I never really ever saw it in anyone else, and it just made me wonder, do other people feel the same way I do? Was I so different? Was something wrong with me specifically? Or has everyone just gotten so good at only showing what's acceptable?
Fuck!
Eventually, I stopped caring about the reason and decided to invest my early and mid-20s really figuring out the question of how do I manage my emotions? And here's why. I was tired of cleaning up the messes I made. When anger, sadness, or any other type of emotion gets too intense, it overrides your emotional brain and you just make decisions you never would otherwise. And once the intensity passes, I've often been left with drama, consequences, or just straight up regret. One time I threw a burrito at my brother when I was younger because he asked for one too many bites. And I'm sure I'm not alone when I, share that I've learned how to fix a wall. And I'm not proud to admit this, but I've even lashed out at a close mentor, a person I looked up to who originally wanted to help me. And it just all makes you feel so, powerless, not really being able to control yourself in moments like those. You feel like a child with the destructive consequences of a man. And after enough cycles of this, something needs to be done. So here's what I've learned in the process. Stage 1, awareness. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Intense emotions are volatile. You want to handle it like fire, carefully, especially at those peak intensities. Because when it's intense and in your face and it's hard to ignore, this is often when people get overwhelmed with emotion and act up or emotion dump on someone else. And the problem is that this masquerades as reflection, when what's important is time and space for the intensity to pass. There is a time and place for reflection and planning, but it's not when you're riled up, okay? But what if I told you you could stop it before it even gets that bad? So it takes time and effort and patience, but with enough practice, you can rise up to the levels of emotional awareness. So level 1 starts with complete unawareness. It's just completely unaware until it's too intense and too late to do anything about it besides damage control. Getting to level 2 means you're aware of what's happening, but you still can't do anything while it's happening. So here is when you start noticing how it feels. And the beginning, the middle, the end of it, then eventually you get to level 3. And this is where you're aware of the emotions you're feeling, right? And you could actually do something about it. And this starts feeling good, right? This is where you pause and you excuse yourself. And this is where you can take a moment and regain perspective. And level 4 is when you're aware before it even happens. So you're fine-tuned enough to the nuances of your emotions and how they feel when the intense emotions start bubbling up. It's a beautiful moment when you catch yourself here and are able to calm yourself down before anything happens. So how can you raise the awareness of your emotions? Well, first, start noticing the emotions just throughout the day. Since it'll be more random, it will most likely be a little bit more subtle. So mindfulness meditations help with this. And by creating an awareness of your subtle emotions, your awareness gets more sensitive. So feel free to use an emotion wheel if you want to be able to describe those. But by noticing and labeling often enough, you create a baseline. So when intense emotions happen, pay attention to how the beginning, middle, and end feel. And this brings us to stage 2, action. While a lot of awareness has to do with being, there is a sense of agency and control that comes from doing, taking action. So to preface, I am not a professional. I'm just a guy who spent a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of focus really trying to figure out how this works. So it was not quick and it took a lot of effort. And I'm just sharing these insights that have worked for me, and honestly, I'm still working on this, and I expect this to be a lifelong journey lesson. So that being said, here are some actions you can take to kind of help you on your own journey, okay? So to start off, it sounds simple enough, but getting enough sleep. Not all sleep is the same. So REM sleep specifically is important for emotional regulation, and this type of sleep is loaded in the second half of the night. So that means if you cut your sleep short, say from 8 hours to 6 hours, you're disproportionately reducing the amount of REM sleep you get, meaning that the part of sleep that helps make emotions and problems more manageable, not as intense, and makes you not as reactive, might get 50 to 70% less time to really do its magic. So I've been tracking my sleep since about 2019, and my REM sleep reliably goes from about 90 minutes to sometimes less than 30 minutes if I don't get enough sleep or I wake up too early. And it's not the end of the world, and you don't need a sleep tracker, but if you want to set yourself up for success in managing emotions, make sure you're prioritizing your sleep. Okay. So the next one is meditation, and meditation helps with awareness, as I mentioned in stage 1. It helps you respond versus react, which when dealing with people and emotions, whether it's your own or others, it really becomes incredibly important because emotions are contagious. Imagine a puppy walking into your room or an angry person, coming in and bringing the vibe down. And here's the thing, just like others can change your emotions, you change others as well. So as often as possible, we want to be thinking of how we're able to put ourselves in a situation where we're the cause and not the effect. So this means you respond versus react, you're leading. And by developing a long-term meditation practice as like a habit, your amygdala, the part of your brain that's responsible for the flight or fight response, minimizes and goes down. So little things or little irritations don't feel as big of a deal. So while your prefrontal cortex, another part of your brain, helps with attention and awareness and cognition and a bunch of other benefits that ultimately make it much easier to respond instead of reacting, and allows you to be the cause and not the effect. So all of that's just for meditation. And this next one is movement. So stuff like exercising, walking, lifting, sports, or anything that really allows you to get outside of your head, right? And more so into your body. In addition to just being healthy for your physiology, it also does allow you to take the edge off of intense emotions. And L-theanine is something I actually originally discovered just trying to get better sleep. But for me and my friends that I've shared with this, we kind of have confirmed it's kind of a literal chill pill. So if I'm feeling irritated or stressed, or a friend is feeling really anxious, about 200 milligrams to 400 milligrams really makes a noticeable difference. And here's the one that I use, but again, I'm just sharing what I do and how it's affected my life. So hydration is also another important thing that I notice, that when I get physically hot, my emotional regulation isn't as great. And it also typically is a sign that my temperature regulation isn't as great either, probably from dehydration. And since your brain is about 80% water, if you're dehydrated, your brain that's responsible for your emotions and how you react is not working as well. So this makes you more vulnerable to reacting as opposed to responding. So you want to be mindful about your water and your hydration. And this next one is probably not going to be as cool, but it's therapy. And why it's helpful is because it allows you to recount and process your emotions and helps you recognize your patterns. So you can actually learn a lot about yourself, improve your self-awareness, and discover healthy coping mechanisms to deal with stressors in life, right? If done well. But here's the thing, you do want to be careful about this because, in this process, you might want to crave a label that gives you an explanation. And the thing is, even if you get it, while momentarily satisfying as an explanation, it ultimately doesn't change really anything if you don't change anything. So the responsibility and the burden is still on you, not a label to fix your life. So how you approach therapy and the fit between you and your therapist does make a big difference in your overall experience. So you want to make sure that when you find a therapist, you want to make sure you guys vibe, right? Because it's kind of like dating. You might not be so lucky to find the right person on the very first try. But if you're patient and willing to put in that effort, you will eventually find one that you mesh well with, and it can actually be really amazing for your personal growth. And I can imagine most guys, it might be a bit tough to take this step because, I don't know how much stigma it has now, but, it might not have as much as in the past, but there is still a fair amount of friction. For me personally, I probably thought about it for 4 to 5 years before actually even talking to a therapist. And in that process, every couple of moments I'd have one of those times where, I'd be like, oh yeah, you know what, maybe I should get one, right? But there would always be some type of small obstacle in the way that would kind of cause me just to say, you know what, no, I'm good. I don't need one now. And that might have been true too, but to be honest, my procrastination came from feeling overwhelmed about getting started with the process, more so than just not feeling like I needed it. Nowadays though I have never actually really used them, there are a bunch of therapy apps out there now. So if you are considering it, just look up a video on how to get therapy through your insurance, or maybe check out one of those apps. For me personally, it's been a few years since I had a therapist, but even now, I still use and think about often some of those like mindsets and insights that I gained from those experiences. And I know that was kind of a lot, but last but not least, just remember the power of taking a pause. Walk away, give yourselves 5 to 10 minutes to let the intensity cool down, and give yourself a chance to respond instead of react. And I know this isn't an exhaustive list, but here are some just simple action steps you can take that I've taken in my life that you could potentially consider implementing in your own. So with all that said, take what is helpful, leave what's not, and yeah, we can move on to stage 3. Now it's time to live your life and work your way up the 4 stages of awareness. So keep in mind, it is okay not to be perfect. Celebrate your wins when you catch yourself handling a situation well, and know that congratulating yourself positively reinforces the type of identity of someone who cares about how their emotions affect themselves as well as others. So, emotions are inevitable. The emotional ups and downs are a part of life and we can't avoid them. Honestly, that's not even the point. Emotions are part of what makes life meaningful and beautiful, so when we can, we want to have them contribute to our lives instead of control our lives. And when we do this, we can cherish them so much more for what they are. A universal language that connects us all and makes the human experience a lot more interesting. Thanks for watching.